Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the director of the Game Developers Conference, Megan Scavio.
Good morning, everyone. Wow. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to GDC 25. Okay, so before I introduce our keynote this morning, I did want to take the opportunity to say happy birthday to someone very important to the GDC. So if Facebook didn't lie to me this morning, today is Gordon Walton's birthday. I know. So Gordon hails from Origin Systems, Sony Online Entertainment. He was at BioWare Austin recently and now at Playdom. And he is one of 2 or 3 people that can honestly say they've been to all 25 GDCs. So happy birthday, Gordon, if you're out there. Okay. So this morning's keynote presenter is also a longtime friend of the GDC. He first appeared on this keynote stage in 2005, where he gave us the first information about the technology behind the console then codenamed Revolution. It's now known, obviously, as the Wii. He also appeared in 2006, where he spoke about disrupting development and introduced the Western development community to philosophies on engaging new players. Then returning in 2009, he debuted a new game from the Legend of Zelda franchise, one of my personal favorites. We are honored and pleased to welcome him back to the keynote stage for our 25th conference. Nintendo continues to innovate and captivate developers and gamers alike, and we're looking forward to his unique insights in both the history and future of the game business. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Satoru Iwata.
Good morning, and thank you for again inviting me to GDC. During the year, one of my most important jobs is to speak to people, to reporters, to financial analysts, to business partners, and many others. But speaking at this event is special because here, today, I have the chance to speak to my colleagues. I am happy to be here. I guess some of you may have come today because you figured maybe I can learn something. Well, I hope that might be true. But honestly, the value of GDC is that all developers can learn from each other. Nintendo is no exception. And this year, we have a lot to talk about. We've all heard what the development community is saying. It's very confusing time for people, not much stability. We are all playing much bigger gambles, and that's getting scary. Everyone is vulnerable. When we hear quotes such as these from our fellow developers, it confirms for us that our world is indeed changing. But let me add 2 more. When we focus on what we are passionate about, it just keeps on working, proactive, not reactive. And maybe the 3 little words we need to remember most. Content is king. As the industry evolves, as distribution and business model change, one thing is constant. The primary need is still content. Without quality content, without the imagination of everyone in this room today, there is nothing. there is no industry. To be clear, you are the center of the video game universe. Before I deal with the here and now, I'd like to spend some time talking about the last 25 years of industry history. And it is a kind of shocking for me to realize that I have worked as a video game developer for all of those 25 years. As I said GDC in 2005, I actually began developing games while still college student. My friends and I formed the company known as HAL Laboratory. Back then, being young, I was entirely wrapped up teaching myself video game programming. Somehow, I concluded that I had video game pretty much figured out. Pretty cool, huh? And this impression carried over to my first introduction to Nintendo and Mr. Miyamoto. Also, he's young. Even after starting to work with Nintendo, I had confidence that I was better than anyone Nintendo when it came to programming technique, and the software that I was making was technically superior to Mr. Miyamoto's. And I believe this would be proven when consumers went out to buy our games. Well, I said before, it is the job of game developers to learn from each other. And Mr. Miyamoto taught me a painful lesson. Content really is king. His games outsold mine by a huge margin. I found out then that engineering isn't quite as important as imagination. To be honest, I was ashamed. And during this time, to use the English expression, I lost my attitude. Well, let me talk about these last 25 years in a wider perspective. When we began making video games, there was no industry. Very few of us considered it a profession. It was just a hobby. It was often hard to even define what our roles were. We would all just take turns doing what needed to be done. If ideas were needed, we were game designers. If characters were needed, we were artists. If music or sound effects were needed, then we would create them. And in the same way, we decided who would go out to buy lunch for everyone, who would clean up, and how we would pay the rent. Now, I realize this sounds like a good old days lecture you might hear from your grandfather. But it wasn't necessarily all better. Yes, we had a lot of fun, but there were definite downsides. We made almost no money. And what we produced by today's standards was primitive. We were video game cavemen. Today, everything had changed. Everything is bigger. Graphics processing was increased exponentially, and the addition of the vast amount of memory has erased the boundaries for game worlds. At the same time, all this comes at a cost. Also, much bigger are the size of the teams required to build today's big games, the timeline they require, and the amount of money needed to fund all of this. At one time, development cost of $1 million was unthinkable. Today, many gamers demand titles that cost 50 million or more. It's still fun, but there is a lot more to worry about now than just paying the rent. Fortunately, there is one kind of growth that has helped offset cost, and that's the number of people playing games. As you are all aware, expanding the population of gamers has been basic strategy for Nintendo. That's clear with both Nintendo DS and Wii. But we wanted to measure how big the growth was. We already know how many game machines are being sold by referring sales data like NPD. But this doesn't indicate how often one game machine is shared by several players or who those players are. To understand this, Nintendo has been carrying out large-scale surveys twice a year. This began in May 2005 in Japan, and we later expanded that to both the United States and Europe. Here in America, we collaborate with an independent group to conduct mail surveys with 5,000 people aged 6 to 74. These people agree in advance to take part. Here first is a pyramid chart which indicates breakdown of game players in the United States as of November 2007. The left edge is 6 years old and the right 74. And the upper side is male and the lower side is female. The blue indicates those who have played with a dedicated video game machine owned in that household at least once in the last year. The yellow shows sleeping users who used to play but have not over the last year. And pink non-users are those who have never played a dedicated video game machines. At that time, those actives who had played in the previous year totaled just under 114 million. Now let's look at the same picture in October of last year, 2010. The number of active players over the previous 12 months jumped to just under 160 million. Shown a different way, you can see that 45% of people between age 6 and 74 reported playing their dedicated video game machines in November 2007. And this number jumped to 62% by October 2010. Another chart indicates generated most of that growth. Here, the dark pink bar at the bottom represents owner of either Wii or Nintendo DS. These two machines have been driving force in expanding the US gaming population. And next graph shows the corresponding results in Europe. We have combined the data for 6 countries where Nintendo operates its own business, namely Germany, UK, France, Spain, Italy, and the Netherlands. So far, the active user ratio there is much lower than that in the US. But this means even more opportunity for growth. And of course, there are also a number of emerging markets not represented at all in our surveys yet. This is very encouraging for all of us.